What are you doing here? What? What do you mean, what? Weren't you supposed to have moved? Or did you just move your stuff and you're still living here? A neighbor who spoke to me as I couldn't get into my house because I didn't have my keys. However, I was completely shocked by the neighbor's words. I hadn't heard anything about moving. If I had really moved, I would have left my smartphone somewhere. Thinking this might be the case, I checked inside the mailbox. And there I found my smartphone and keys. Hello? Mom? What are you thinking? Where are you right now? I moved without telling you, so of course, I won't tell you where I am. That key is for a coin locker at the station. I've put only the bare minimum of your belongings there. You should be raised by your grandparents from now on. They seem to love you more than we do. Wait a minute. I can't just accept that explanation. Explain it to me so I can understand. What are you thinking? What don't you understand? I've been telling you since you were little. You might not be disabled, but we don't need someone ugly like you. We never expected someone ugly like you to be born to parents like us. So you abandoned me. Exactly. There's no point in supporting someone ugly like you, said my mother, hanging up the phone, leaving me filled with anger. However, as it was getting darker, I had no choice but to contact my nearby grandparents. I explained the situation to them. And it was decided that I would live with my grandparents until I became an adult. About 8 years later. It's been a while. Have you been well? What? Wait a minute. Why are you here? I was at a loss for words at the sudden appearance of my mother, who hadn't contacted me for 8 years. I wondered why she was here, despite having abandoned me and supposedly cut ties. What do you mean by being here? What are you doing here? You still speak so rudely, even to a mother you haven't seen in a long time. I've never spoken rudely to you, and I don't know who you're mistaking me for. But I'd rather you just disappeared. When I clearly told my mother this while looking into her eyes, her expression stiffened a bit. She probably hadn't imagined being spoken to like that by me. If it were the old her, she would have lost her temper the moment I said those words. But now she just frowned and didn't raise her voice. You don't have to say things like that. Can I come in for a bit? There are some things I need to discuss about the future. I have nothing to talk about with you. It's been a while. Have you finally become unable to live on your own and come back? Well, let's at least listen to what she has to say. Come on in. It seemed as if my grandparents knew my mother would come. I was confused, but the next moment, my grandparents' words turned my mother pale. My name is Hannah, and I am now a middle school student. I attend a public middle school and do not participate in club activities. But I have been able to achieve top grades. I'm home. The results of the midterm exams are out. I scored above average on everything. I don't really care. Whether you get good grades or not doesn't concern me. Just because you got good grades in public school, don't get too overconfident. My mother has never been interested in my grades, and this has been the case for a while now. Although the atmosphere at home is now the worst. It was a normal family until I started elementary school. Hannah. Try on the clothes Mom bought for you. It's a cute dress. Hannah, you'll become an idol or a model in the future. So you need to be sensitive to fashion from now on. Yes. Mother was tall and beautiful, having been a model herself. Father was also handsome, and I was told from a young age that I would grow up to be beautiful. However, as I grew up, my face did not turn out to be what one might call beautiful. Instead, it became a typical, plain face. I never felt complex about my own appearance, so it wasn't a problem for me. However, my mother's attitude began to change when I was in 3rd grade. Mom, Mia was wearing a cute dress the other day. I want to buy it too. What? You don't need a dress. What? You don't need to dress up when you have no promising future. Still in elementary school, I couldn't understand why my mother had changed so much. No matter what I said, she kept being indifferent, and my father started to act coldly like her. Gradually, I began to shut my heart off from my parents. Time flew by quickly, and I reached the 6th grade. I had always worked hard on my studies, and I loved French. So I wanted to attend a middle school that focused on French education. I want to go to this middle school. I'll study hard on my own. Can I take the entrance exam? What? You don't need to go to a private school. Just go to a public school. Even if you get into a private school, who do you think is going to pay for it? If you think you're worth spending that much money on, you're sorely mistaken. I'll study hard. No? That's not the point. We're not paying, and if you can manage it yourself, then do whatever you want. Since I was in 3rd grade, my parents had been indifferent towards me. So this level of response was normal for me. But looking back now, I realize that my parents were toxic from that time. While I understood the financial issue of not being able to afford a private school, the way they spoke to me was too harsh. They made remarks that could be seen as denying my worth, saying I had no value. Understood. I'm sorry. If you think you are worth that much, you are greatly mistaken. You should be more humble. Yes. Be thankful. You get the bare minimum of clothes and food. It's unthinkable to want anything more than that. I didn't argue with what they said and gave up on taking the exam. Just because it's a public school doesn't mean I can't study at all. The private school I wanted to attend did have better facilities for studying languages, like short-term study abroad programs and many foreign teachers, compared to public schools. However, I was confident that I could still improve my French by attending a public middle school, depending on my own efforts. After I started middle school, I devoured the English textbooks and reference books in the library, and grew to achieve top grades in French in my grade. I set a goal to be able to watch French movies on TV with subtitles. And I spent my 3 years of middle school dedicated to studying French. Then one day. So, what are you planning to do for a job after graduating middle school? What? A job. I might do part-time work, but I'm planning to go to high school as usual. What? That's impossible. How long do you plan to have us take care of you? We've taken care of you for over 10 years. So you should work and pay us back once you graduate middle school. I was utterly shocked by my parents' words. I could understand if they told me to earn my own spending money through part-time work. However, demanding that I pay back all the money spent on me so far was beyond unreasonable. I am still a minor, and my parents have a duty to support me. I never intended to say that, but I was too shocked to speak after hearing what my parents had said. I always thought you had a cheeky personality, but I wonder who you take after. Do you really think you're worth being allowed to continue your education through high school? Wait a minute. I don't plan on going to a private high school, a regular public one is fine. What do you plan to do about the money it will cost in the meantime? Of course, I'll work part-time and I'll contribute all that money to the household. No, that's not going to be enough. You can't be naive thinking you can go to high school and work a part-time job on the side. You should work full-time and then do your part-time job. My parents said this to me with serious faces. They weren't joking, they really meant that I shouldn't go to high school. Thinking that talking with my parents any further would be pointless, I went back to my room. Why? I planned to attend a public high school and save up for college entrance and tuition fees by working part-time. I wanted to go to a top liberal arts college. So I had calculated which tutoring services to use and how much it would cost. I had never intended to ask my parents for money. I wanted to improve my life on my own. All these plans were denied by my parents, and I reached my limit. Upon entering my room, various emotions welled up and tears fell freely from my eyes. That night, feeling like I might go crazy if I stayed alone, I went to my grandparents' house nearby. Since I was little, my grandparents had always loved me dearly and had the opposite personalities of my parents. I thought they would understand how I felt. I just want to go to a public high school. I'm not asking to be sent to tutoring or to participate in club activities, which I never did anyway. Yet, those fools. Are they saying that again? It's unthinkable not to go to high school. If you want to go, it's a parent's responsibility to let you. Shall we go and give them a piece of our mind? What do they think they're doing to their own daughter? Grandpa and Grandma? Thank you. I'm just happy to have someone listen to me. I felt somewhat relieved after talking to my grandparents. However, the possibility of being able to attend high school remained low. If my grandparents spoke to my parents, the situation might change slightly. But I knew the hope was slim. My parents would take an authoritarian attitude even towards my grandparents, and would never bend their will. There had been several clashes between my parents and grandparents about the way they treated me, but nothing had ever improved. So, I thought this time would be no different. Then, about 3 months later, one day after school I returned home. But my mother did not open the door even though I rang the doorbell. I didn't have a spare key, so I couldn't get in unless someone was home. Thinking she might have gone shopping, I waited outside the house. While reading a French vocabulary book, 1 hour, 2 hours, then 3 hours passed. But my mother did not return. It was about time for my father to come home from work, but he did not show up either. Then, a neighbor who had returned from shopping approached me with a surprised look. "What are you doing here?" "What? What? Weren't you supposed to have moved? Or did you just move your stuff and still continue to live here?" My mind went blank at the neighbor's words. I had heard nothing about moving. "What do you mean?" "I haven't heard anything about moving." "Oh? But your parents were moving stuff out after you went to school. So I thought you were moving. You've been waiting in front of the house since then. So I wondered what was going on." At that moment, I was certain of what my parents had done. They had abandoned me and moved somewhere else. Perhaps they thought it would somehow work out because my grandparents lived nearby. I didn't know the full truth, but I understood the fact that my parents had abandoned me. I had left everything, including my smartphone, inside the house, thinking it unlikely that my parents would take it. On a hunch, I checked the mailbox and found my smartphone and some keys inside. I didn't know what the keys were for, but I decided to call my mother anyway. I had so many questions about what she was thinking and what she intended to do next. "Hello? Mom? What are you thinking? Where are you right now? I moved without telling you, so of course, I won't tell you where I am. That key is for a coin locker at the station. I've put only the bare minimum of your belongings there. You should be raised by your grandparents from now on. They seem to love you more than we do." Wait a minute. I can't just accept that explanation. Explain it to me so I can understand. What are you thinking? What don't you understand? I've been telling you since you were little. You might not be disabled, but we don't need someone ugly like you. We never expected someone ugly like you to be born to parents like us. So you abandoned me. Exactly. There's no point in supporting someone ugly like you. After saying that, my mother hung up the phone. I was filled with anger more than sadness. The rage towards two people who abandoned their parental responsibilities and acted so selfishly. I hadn't done anything to trouble my parents. I hardly ever used any money. I wore old gym clothes as pajamas and only had my school tracksuit for home wear. I had only 3 outfits for going out but continued to wear them without complaint. For study materials, I saved the money I received as Christmas gifts from my grandparents. It was infuriating to be insulted by my parents to the very end, despite the fact they hardly did anything for me. However, as a middle school student, I couldn't just sleep on the streets. I felt terrible about it, but I contacted my grandparents to stay with them for a while. Grandpa and Grandma, I'm really sorry to trouble you. After I graduate from middle school, I'll work part-time and contribute to the household. What are you talking about? You don't need to worry about that. Besides, it was right for you to get away from parents who would abandon their child. Of course, you can go to high school, and we'll buy you anything you want. You can depend on us. It's really sad. But don't worry. People like that will eventually face their karma. They'll surely end up in hell, and you will live your own life. Thanks to my grandparents' encouragement, I was able to look forward to the future. They promised to support me in my future life, which gave me some relief. And you know, your mother isn't in any position to call someone ugly. She was never naturally beautiful. What do you mean? I thought Mom used to be a model. And she is pretty. She was a model, yes, but she wasn't born beautiful. It's a bit hard to say, but she called her own daughter ugly. When she herself has spent a lot of money on plastic surgery to look like that. What? Really? I was shocked to learn a hidden fact about my mother. She wasn't as beautiful as top models or celebrities, but she was prettier than the average person. Thanks to plastic surgery. I don't condemn plastic surgery at all. It's just one way to make oneself look better, and there's nothing wrong with that. However, it's absurd for her to criticize my looks when her own beauty was surgically enhanced. It just doesn't make sense. So she got her looks from surgery, and she calls me ugly. That's definitely strange. Moreover, she secretly used the money your grandfather had saved. He kept a considerable amount of cash in a safe, and one day he realized it was missing. When confronted, she admitted she used it for her surgeries. We heard she was doing well financially because of her modeling work. But that wasn't really the case. You're kidding. It caused quite a stir. And that's why we didn't interact much with her even after you were born. We didn't forgive her for using up the savings. Well, we couldn't ask her to repay the money right after you were born. If she had money to repay us, we wanted her to spend it on her child instead. Ultimately, the money that was supposed to be for raising children wasn't much. So it would have been better if we had asked for it back. It's truly mysterious how a person like my mother could come from two such kind people. But I'm genuinely relieved that I didn't inherit my mother's personality. Living with my grandparents means I won't experience the stress I had when living with those two. However, since I thought it would be a burden on my grandparents, I decided to work part-time and pay for my own expenses as much as possible. They suggested that I attend a private high school, but I couldn't impose on them to that extent. They might be financially comfortable, but that's not the issue. I had established a way to study on my own during the 3 years of middle school. And I knew I wouldn't have any problems at a public high school. I was grateful to be able to continue my education. So I spent 3 years of high school immersed in studies. As a result, I was accepted into my first choice university with a tuition waiver. And continued to study hard. Working for a multinational company and repaying my grandparents was my goal. Grandma, does this makeup look cute? Yes. It's really cute. Is that so? It kind of looks like a witch to me. It's a makeup style that's currently popular overseas. I adapted it to suit my features. Well, I don't expect Grandpa to understand, so it's okay if you don't get it. I've seen it on YouTube, and it really suits you. You not only have talent in French but also in makeup. I learned about the fun of fashion and makeup from friends in college. Of course, studying was my main priority in college, and I never neglected it. But in my spare time, I studied fashion and makeup, watching videos from abroad to improve my skills. Then, a year after graduating from college, I was at home with my grandmother when the doorbell rang. Wondering who it could be, I opened the door, and there she was, that detestable woman. It's been a while. Have you been well? What? Wait a minute, why are you here? I was at a loss for words, surprised by the sudden appearance of my mother, who had not contacted me in 8 years. I wondered why she was here, given that she had abandoned me and we were supposed to have cut ties. What are you thinking? Why are you here? You still speak so rudely to a mother you haven't seen in a long time. Rude? I've never spoken rudely to you, and I don't know who you're confusing me with. But I'd rather you just disappeared. When I said this while looking into my mother's eyes, she tensed up a bit. She probably hadn't imagined being spoken to like that by me. If it were the old her, she would have exploded the moment I said those words. But now she just scowled and did not raise her voice. You don't have to say things like that. Could I come in for a bit? There are several things I need to discuss. I have nothing to talk about with you. It's been a while. Have you finally become unable to live on your own and come back? Well, let her in. Let's hear her out. The grandparents spoke as if they knew my mother would come. I didn't understand the situation, but my mother entered the house. I wanted her to leave as soon as possible, so I sat down in a chair with a scowl. What is going on? You're ill? Apparently, you got divorced a while ago and are having financial troubles. It's no surprise you got divorced. Who would want a wife who has had so much plastic surgery? Well, your husband was a piece of work too, easily abandoning his child. So it was you. Dad and Mom spilled the beans? I begged him to keep it a secret. That's the lowest. Little by little, the full story was coming to light. After they abandoned me. At some point my grandparents must have told my father about my mother's plastic surgery. If the divorce was indeed due to my father's disillusionment upon discovering my mother's cosmetic surgeries, it seems he might have married her under the pretense of having attractive children. Not knowing exactly what my father felt deep down, it was clear that the surgery was a catalyst for their divorce. Following the divorce, my mother lived alone until her illness progressed to the point where she could no longer manage by herself, which likely prompted her to seek help. I heard the story too, but it's unbelievable that you, having had surgery yourself, would criticize someone else's appearance. Let's not talk about that anymore. Stop bringing up things from years ago. No matter how many years pass, I clearly remember how I felt back then. And you haven't apologized for abandoning your own child, have you? I do feel bad about it. But it was his idea, not mine. He was the one who decided to move forcefully. That doesn't matter to me. As a mother, isn't it normal to protect your child until the end? Stop making excuses. You didn't love me as a mother should. When I said this, my mother fell silent again. The lack of an apology was proof that she had not reflected on her actions at all. However, I felt that I couldn't say much more since she was seeking help now. Despite recognizing her despicable nature, arguing further seemed pointless. So, what brought you here? We saw the message about you being sick. Since Dad and Mom wouldn't respond to my messages, I had to come here in person. Didn't you worry about me at all, knowing I was sick? No, we weren't worried at all. I even thought it'd be best if you just died out there somewhere. How can you expect help from your parents when you abandoned your own child? Isn't that incredibly convenient? Grandmother's words were spot on. If she thought only she deserved help, that was utterly shameless. But ultimately, Hannah was raised well by dad and mom, so there was no problem, right? She's old enough to graduate from middle school, practically an adult. Stop treating her like a child. Let me remind you, how long has it been since you became an adult? You're a grown-up who still depends on your parents. Whether you're sick or in financial trouble, that's none of our business. If you're an adult, you should manage on your own. And to think you called her ugly and stupid, but now Hannah is working as a model. She did that on her own, not through surgeries like you did. What? No way. You're a model. You don't have to believe it, but it's true. I've been studying hard, and I started making makeup videos targeted at an international audience. It's been a big success, and now I'm working as a part-time influencer and model. That's amazing. You really are a daughter to be proud of. I'm sure you understand, but no amount of sweet talk now will change my feelings. You're like a devil to me, and that's not going to change. No matter how much money you have, I have no intention of helping you, so enjoy your lonely life. As I said this, my mother looked on in despair. The grandparents seemed to have nothing more to say, and she was soon pushed out of the house. However, my stubborn mother lingered at the front door. For hours until the neighbors called the police. Thinking she was a suspicious person. Shocked by the police, she never came near the house again. But she still contacts my grandparents almost daily. From the moment you abandoned your family, you were no longer our daughter. No one wants to extend a hand to someone who can't cherish their own family. To us, Hannah is our only family. We will never betray her. The grandparents' smiling assurance warmed my heart. Wanting to cut all ties with my mother and father, I decided to sell the house we were living in and move into a high-security condo with facilities like a gym and cafe, which would also benefit my grandparents' health. Though I often travel abroad for modeling, I always take my grandparents with me, giving back to them for everything. I've heard that since then. My mother has been struggling with her illness and living meagerly through part-time work. I don't know what will happen if her condition worsens. But I plan to take my grandmother and move abroad in the future. That way, I won't have any means to contact my mother, nor will I know or care what happens to her. Grandpa and Grandma, I consider you my only family. And I look forward to continuing our life together. As I said this, my grandparents looked at each other and smiled warmly. Determined to protect that smile, I will continue to work hard and cherish the time with the two people who truly matter to me. Family isn't just about blood relations. Even a mother who gave birth to you can betray you. What matters is whether there's a bond of family love, a mutual unconditional affection. My mother raised me not as a daughter but as a defective girl. So there's no bond between us, and I feel no urge to help her, no matter her troubles. I suspect I'd feel the same if my father were in a similar situation. But it's different with my grandparents. If anything were to happen to them, I'd do everything to help, prioritizing them above all else. Looking ahead, I might get married and possibly have children. If that happens, I intend to nurture a bond of unconditional love with my own family. That's what a family should be and my ideal vision of what a family looks like.